Jason, how are you?
Christian, it's good to be with you, man. This is fun. We're trying something a little different here for me.
Yeah, well, I don't think I've done too many live interviews either, but I figured if it's going to be memorable or if it's going to be more interesting, probably the live thing might, I don't know, one of us might make a mistake or say something we regret. So.
I always tell guests when we have them on the podcast, like the beauty of podcast is, if there's any questions you don't want to answer or if you say something you don't want to say, I said I can edit it out and everything's fine. But and I guess technically, since this is going to air on my podcast too, I guess I could do that if we screw something up royally. But we already got viewers coming in now, which is great to see. And yeah, we'll see how this works.
Yeah, man. So ultimately, you kind of just asked about chatting, and I really appreciate your person. I think you're a good guy. Like from just a little I know of you, maybe you really are a max murderer and you're just kind of slipped into this role as doing some podcasts, but doing things for horse racing is always something that I like to support. So happy to kind of dive deep and answer any questions you have. I know people like to think about, what does it take to be a big bettor and to gamble in tournaments and bet, tens of thousands of dollars in a day and things like that. So by all means, have at it. Some of the things I may not answer, but I'll do my best, and yeah. I'm always here to help people. So I always encourage people to reach out to me if they have a question. I don't like giving out horses like that. That's not my style. But if people have questions about strategy or betting techniques and more higher level stuff, I'm certainly there to try to help people not just hemorrhage money and give away money and because there's like two different ways of losing money, right? You can lose it on big shots or you can lose it slow, like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Mm-hmm. And most people don't realize there's an illusion when they think they're winning or they're getting seconds a lot and they actually kind of pat themselves on the back, but at the end of the day, they literally have just lost, maybe 10 or 20% over the course of a year rather than been profitable.
Yeah, I found from emails from a lot of our listeners, people are, especially hearing from horse players and horse players who are successful, people are really just curious to think about the process. And most people, I think, are just wanting to improve their own game and become better at it. I remember getting an email from a guy saying, I'm always embarrassed to post my bets because I'm just a $2 bettor. And I was like, there's no shame, at least there shouldn't be, of being a $2 bettor. Like you can still improve your game, I think, as a $2 bettor and try to become, better at something that you're just trying to grow and learn in.
We all got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I vividly recall sneaking into the OTB in Del Mar, right next to the racetrack, and betting $2 trifectas and, pick threes, dollar pick threes and things of that nature to get me going. What makes horse racing special is you can actually bet 50 cents, on a pick six or a pick five, and pick fours with, dollar increments. And you can literally crush and make, 10,000 five-figure type scores. But I think you should always be humble in the beginning, especially when you think you know what you're doing. I would say that through the course of my betting career, I got pretty cocky pretty fast. And I think that's kind of a natural tendency is to think that you're better at something than you are. And then after a few thousand hours, you realize, wow, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And then you all of a sudden learn something, tweak something, and all of a sudden now you're better than you were. And then you get that artificial sense of cockiness again. But, it's one thing to be winning over a course of 6 months. It's one thing to be winning over a course of a year. It's another thing to be winning over the course of 5 years. And so some people are really happy just getting close and telling good stories and having some big wins here and there, but ultimately losing a little bit. And that's fine. Everyone's got their own model. So if you're a $2 bettor and you just want to, get your friends around the TV screen and celebrate a few cool surprises, that's awesome. But I think each person has their own risk threshold, mm-hmm. right? And I think for anybody to play this game that's going to lose, roughly 80% of the time or more, and be considered successful takes a lot of courage and strength. And so I think nothing wrong with starting small to learn your lessons and then eventually trying to pinpoint what your strengths are and also definitely understand what your weaknesses are too.
I want to talk more about that and the losing threshold or just playing threshold and fear and stuff. But we were talking the other day on the phone and you'd kind of talked about, I think it was Saturday or maybe it was Friday. You were talking about getting ready for Hong Kong. And it got me kind of thinking, the more I talk to horse players, especially serious horse players, the more I see folks watching over at Hong Kong or looking for different avenues than maybe traditionally they had. I think a lot of guys for a lot of years, were Naira only or Southern California only. What has that been like for you in the last couple of years, or maybe even it's the last 10 years, in terms of finding products you're really excited about playing and maybe ones where you think you can find a solid edge?
So I think there's two worlds there. There's tournaments, and then there's actual regular betting on a daily basis. Tournaments, believe it or not, I think what's really clever about them is you can take any particular day at a track, and you can typically find something that has value. Like one racetrack will have probably one horse that is got value into it. So you could play a tournament around that horse. So for tournaments, I think you could do it at almost any track, which is why I think smaller tracks should definitely be more encouraged to be a participant in different mythical betting tournaments or live money betting tournaments. The challenge with the live betting tournaments is you can't bet, more than probably $1,000 on a horse without changing the odds. So, but you could still create a tournament that has a higher entry fee, and there could be 50 grand or 100 grand on the line, and you can get a lot of coverage of it, people talking smack, and some people sharing their big bet. I still think there's some room to improve how we actually broadcast tournaments and highlight the bigger players that are taking those risks. And then you have the regular betting tournaments or the regular betting and how you strategize around that. Now, when you look at the U.S. market, the field size has dropped significantly. And Gary West had mentioned this to me years ago, that the horse population was going to decline about probably 5 years ago at the Horse Player World Series. And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall. So I started dipping more into Hong Kong. And ultimately, if I'm going to be one of the best players in the world, I have to be able to compete in Hong Kong. And so that's been a focus. I've bought a bunch of data. I've kind of tinkered with it, not as heavily as I have with the US stuff. I'm just literally right now getting juicier and juicier with it, so I can understand the nuances. It's so interesting that it happens to be on that type of a surface. That is something that in the US we don't tend to see as much, right? We don't see tracks that are kind of good and just in a kind of a dirt that's just a little different than what we're used to out here. So it is a different game. So I don't think if you're betting normally how you would in the US as you were on Hong Kong, you're probably gonna run up against it pretty quick. But Hong Kong has a lot more value. And when I say a lot more value, I guess I would be a bit naive to say, 50% more or something like that, because the sharks are definitely swimming over there. But there's certain contexts that appear. So to me, you're looking for context if you're ever going to be good at anything, right? There's a reason why these coaches like Belichick will create. Basically, they'll bait you, right? They'll create scenarios to try to get certain players to do certain things on the field. And then all of a sudden, when they know that the person is anticipating based on a certain movement, right? It's kind of like a disinformation act, trying to trick people. Then they'll go for that context where they're going to take that shot, kind of thinking of that Gronk play that got the Patriots the Super Bowl that one year when Josh McDaniels decided to do the same play a couple times and just kind of tweak it. So I know I'm going on and on, but the idea about Hong Kong though is there's some context there that is ripe. The U.S. market is so slim that you really have to be so patient that I don't think most horse players have the patience to watch. There'll be a week where I won't bet a race, and so it's just, I don't know if Americans are designed to, again, if you have the goal to be profitable, if you want to just lose 10% and try to do the rebate and do that, or 5% to 5 to 10%, that's a different animal. But I'm speaking to horse players that are not betting, let's say 7 figures or more a year. So if you're betting smaller figures, then I would say you're probably better off starting on Hong Kong now. You're going to have a more consistent group of horses, and you're going to have a much better, if you're a math person, if you're an engineer, if you're somebody that's going to do things, I think you're going to start to see that it's way more reliable. and there's less shenanigans that happen over there. So I would definitely encourage every single new horse player to go over there, and all their content is free, all their data is free, all their replays are free, all their vet records are free. So you can look at all this stuff, and so I would be a big proponent for Hong Kong racing, and I think they should just have tournaments. I don't know why they haven't started dabbling in the tournament world and so forth, but that would be something that would be really exciting to see a bunch of people from Americans compete against Hong Kong players on Hong Kong racing and stuff.
What was the timeline for you to start really diving in full-fledged to Hong Kong? I mean, do you just open up the PPs and that next week you're going at it, or did you kind of follow it and kind of familiarize yourself with the circuit a little bit more before you jumped in?
I started looking at it probably about 7 years ago. I just started watching races here and there, clicking on the hkjc.com/English site, and just started watching like what was going on. It takes a long time, I don't know if I'm considered young or old to some people, but like it, to learn new ways of reading data, right? Going up and down. I mean, I can handicap probably in the top upper 0.1 percentile of people in the country. I can see things very quickly. And so I think with Hong Kong, it took me probably about 2 to 3 years and they only race twice a week, but being able to dissect again, it's chronologically different. They don't always put the times in the same distribution, right? They don't put just the leaders and the times. You have to kind of look at things differently or download data and then kind of recreate your own racing forms. But it's really user friendly. You just got to practice. And so, I mean, if you're not like growing, what are you doing, in life? So, I mean, you have to go through some aches and pains and kind of just struggle through it. And then after a while, man, you really start to realize that there's, 10 to 14 horse fields. And I mean, you'll see horses win, above 10 to 1 consistently on a weekly basis. And so I think that's where, if you're a player that's not betting 7 figures or more, then you're going to want to look at trying to identify context that horses can win, definitely above 5 to 1. But, it's, I don't know. Have you taken a look at it? Have you
I watch it a fair bit. Since I work in kind of the broadcasting end of racing, I'm always fascinated by the broadcast, and I love the broadcasts from overseas and Australia and all that stuff. I was actually talking to a listener emailed me the other day, like, why is it that when there's a photo over there, it takes 3 seconds for them to get it up on screen and like talk about who won the photo, and here it's this big thing. And so I love to watch it over there, and I've really just more regularly started watching it just in the last, really since quarantine started. And I know they reopened, and I think they're still racing without fans over there too. And I know traditionally they get huge crowds.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you took the leap. It's hard here in California to be waking up, in the wee hours, but there's different ways that you can make bets with conditional wagering too. So you can just lock in your odds and say, I strongly suggest in Hong Kong, you just focus on the win. I don't think maybe some tries, but really just the win. It's going to take some time for people to understand it's different. And there's definitely some things that don't work in the US that work there. So I would start with watching the replays and just like finding a broadcast partner to just stream them. And again, on Saturdays, like not many people are doing squat on Saturday nights anymore. So like for here, I guess if you're in the East Coast, it's a little harder, but I definitely would encourage people to spend probably, I don't know, I would say half their bankroll maybe on Hong Kong now and start. I mean, maybe not in the first year, but try to move toward that model. It's world-class. It's, absolutely phenomenal. In terms of the quality of the racing there versus here, it's not that much faster of horses. They have they'll have more competitors in some of their graded stakes races and higher level stuff. But at large, the whole industry, is suffering from a lack of fast horses. And so when you've bred horses for speed over the years, obviously you've seen some of the challenges that can happen in California with horses breaking down more. And we just don't have the quantity of owners. The quality of horses is kind of just fell by the wayside. And so now we're kind of, I don't know, the game has changed. Like in the US, I would say, particularly in the last 2 years, it's changed even more. And that can help some players, that can hurt other players. But I think everyone needs to really look at at racing a little differently in these last 2 years, given the fact that the horses, the stakes races are just so much smaller, so they're harder to bet. So you're now forced, if you're going to be betting on a regular basis, you're forced to be betting lots of claiming races and maiden claiming races and 2-year-old races and races with first time starters. And so like those are races that I think are much, much more difficult to win profitably unless you're, I don't know, some people have relationships. Yeah. Like, yeah. I mean, I still find that negative information is way more valuable than positive information, but I don't talk to trainers. Like I find that it's more of a distraction, and it's hard to quantify too someone's feelings. But anyway, I'm going on and on about that. But yeah, I think like one of the takeaways I hope people take from the show or from this interview is to go to hkjc.com/English and start once a week, just looking at the results, and just maybe pretend and pick, and just go through and just look at a couple horses and try to figure out why horses are winning and try and pick up on patterns and whatnot, because there's more value there than anywhere. And the good news is, if you want to be a bigger player, you're going to be able to compete there. And, at some point here, I'm going to look to raise like 7 figures and start going really hard into Hong Kong. I just want to make sure that everything's proper though. I don't want to just do it blind and just kind of have fun with it. I want it to be super, super dialed, but I'm probably 6 months away from seeking a big raise on that front. And I feel like I've even heard Tommy Massis, I think, after hitting the $1 million pick six, props to him. That's like huge accomplishment. I think like more players are going to start to, I think, diversify and seek other opportunities. Cause I mean, like, I don't know how many times you're going to find value in US racing with horses with race fields less than 7. It's just, it's paltry.
Yeah. I first learned of you through the tournament circuit and tournament world, and then eventually through the television show, but was kind of curious on your feelings on tournaments now. Do you have kind of a set schedule? And because it seemed like in like 2015, 16, it seemed like tournaments were kind of supposed to be the next big thing. And then I don't know that they really took off that way. You mentioned earlier thinking that there's some better ways to kind of broadcast and make them seem interesting, because they should be. I've been to the NHC. I've been to some of the other live money tournaments, and it is fascinating to watch and to kind of see the whole thing. It's a great part of the horse racing world, I think.
I mean, tournaments basically is where Takeout should be. And this is like a really cool little workaround that the industry has been able to come up with to give players that are willing to bet big money an incentive to get Takeout let down. And if you're right, you're going to be rewarded. If you're fearless and you can make $5,000 type bets or $10,000 type bets, you're going to be rewarded. Now, most people don't have that in their DNA. I understand that. Like, it takes a long time. I don't advise that unless you know like what you're really doing, and I mean really doing. The problem is, it's a paradox. The only way to know what you're really doing is to actually start making those bets, so you can understand mistakes. Like on the reality show, for instance, about 5 years ago, there was a classic, the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I bet, I think, almost $20,000 on Palace Malice. And yeah, there's value in that bet. I can always justify that, but it's like I needed to make a dumb bet like that to understand that even though there's value there, that's not like that's like a cool used Tesla. Like I wouldn't want to just kind of whisk that away. Now, granted, the cameras were on and my friends were in first, and I wanted to beat them because we're like the fiercest of competitors. But like, I can do better than that. So I think like on one end, I encourage people to play tournaments to start with the final goal of betting in the big cash games, big money, because you can get like, again, a nice prize if you finish first or second. So I think that's the end goal. So you have to figure out how to get there. Now you can play mythical games as well. There's some value there. I think it's hard to justify a lot of the entry fees for these tournaments, because if you're going to have to spend hundreds of dollars to enter, and you're only going to, I mean, basically you have to be winning at 10% of the time in these mythical tournaments in order to basically justify a profit. I think is fair to say in a lot of situations. And I just think that that's too difficult. So I think if you're going to do mythical stuff, if there's a couple of days where you see like a lot of chaos and you're like, man, this is just wide open and I think I can hit a couple of bombs, then you can go for it. But I definitely am a proponent of all tournaments. I think the industry deserves to be paid. I think tournaments should be the focal point of the industry. And I know a lot of people want to talk about the horses and the trainers and the jockeys, and yeah, they're all deserving as well. But if for every interview that there is of a jockey or a trainer before a big race, there should be an interview of a horse player. And I don't just mean any horse player. I mean horse players that are willing to make big moves. And that's why I think it would be fun to see more rivalries in horse racing in the horse player world. I know that I'm not necessarily like everyone's fan because I'm a bit odd, and I've got crystals behind me. I'm like very much a mind, body, spirit guy. So I'm all about taking good care of myself, making good decisions, and I'm not flashy and I don't like to talk smack. And that doesn't mean if I'm in a competitive environment that I'm gonna push you exactly where I want you when I make a decision, especially if your decision is not in alignment with mine. So I think like pro tournaments, make sure the industry gets paid, make sure that the horse players are given the equal respect as the trainers and the jockeys. When you do these tournaments, they could be promoted way more heavily. And I think even people that are at the top of Churchill and Stronach Group and so forth, all of them should be, I think, trying to identify the top 50 to 40 horse players that could be actually really good content creators and literally unleash them and incentivize them with a lot of really cool tournaments. And I know certain guys like Nate Newby, who's a pioneer in that space, has really created more consistency with those tournaments. And then even having these bonus opportunities where like I was in the Breeders' Cup and I've been alive to win $1 million a couple of times. So like I like having big scores. Like those kind of opportunities are making this even more exciting. So I think, I don't know, I would encourage every single person to start entering the tournament world one way or the other. But again, I think the cash games are probably like much better than the other ones, than the mythicals. But again, I won the Horse Player World Series and having to hit 50 bets, out of like, 700 people. And I mean, that is a skill for the experienced horse player. The cash games, you don't have to be as experienced for, because you can literally have a strong opinion, go all in, and you might finish in the top 10. And then if you really want to go for it for first, then you can unleash and put, another, maybe not all in, but a big chunk down. And so I think that for the focal point should be on cash games on big days. And then you can intermix in some mythical tournaments here and there, but they're just, on one end, they're helping horse players learn more about long shots and that, but also it creates a weird game to play because people can just use long shots at the end to try and catch you. So I think the pick and pray method is probably way better than the live money stuff, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on tournaments, on both the mythical and the cash ones?
Well, I mean, what I was fascinated about watching, I was at the Belmont tournament just as a spectator the year before last, and I would talk to some friends who were not regulars in tournaments and folks who, I think it was 10,000 was the total buy-in. I think 7,500 was your bankroll and 2,500 went in. I might be wrong on that, but their mindset, they're not equipped to bet at that level, and to them, they were just going to try to chip away and hopefully go home with $5,000. And it was just, to me, it was so fascinating to see the personality difference and the thought process difference between a guy like Garrett Skiba, who I was sitting with that day for a while. The money is strictly a means for him to make more money. And if he doesn't, oh, well, he'll try next time. And it's really an interesting frame of mind that I don't think a lot of horse players and maybe just a lot of people have, that fearlessness to go broke, so to speak. And because, I know everybody's results oriented and stuff, and you talked about not giving out picks. Like, to me, it's so weird that people get so excited about somebody, picking a winner, because everybody's going to pick a winner if you give them a week. It's just, it's whether they can do it over a year, 2 years, 3 years, et cetera. But I'm really fascinated by the frame of mind of tournament players and the successful players who can, go into those events or just go into their bets really without a fear of losing, because they know they're going to lose sometimes. I mean, that's just part of the deal. And I think there is a skill in learning how to lose in a weird way. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so you have to kind of know your chops. You have to know where you stand in the hierarchy, right? Self-awareness, know thyself, right? I have friends that are pretty average rappers, and I have some friends that can beatbox. I have some friends that that are good singers, and I have some singers that think they're way better singers than they are. And so like getting that self-awareness when it comes to betting is really important. Looking at your results, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and then figuring out, can I improve or not? Unfortunately, today, it's harder for people to improve. I was lucky enough to grow up with a couple of guys that are very talented and competitive. And so we would all learn from some established authors at the time at the racetrack when we were, 18 years old, 17 years old. And we could ask questions and absorb information. Now it's like so tricky. How do you learn horse racing, right? The only way to learn horse racing is to build a database and basically be a programmer, or log into a DRF formulator or stats lens type program to try to leverage those databases. That's the entry point for horse players. Every single person that comes in the game should go to one of those two places. And then from there, they can start dissecting and looking at horse racing is a thinking man's game, right? Or a thinking woman's game. It's all about mindset and data points and trying to put down numbers to probabilities. I don't know if that many people are want to do that. Right. So that's the challenge, is how hard are you willing to work? And I've dedicated well over 10,000 hours to this. And I mean, I could be way better at playing guitar, surfing, running. I could probably be a triathlete now by all this. I just started learning swimming like crazy again. So it's fun, but it's like, you have to choose. And sometimes your destiny chooses you. So I think like you have to find out where you are on the graph. And if you're not like in the upper 10%, then just admit it to yourself and try and get smarter by either teaming up with other players, trying to, get your bankrolls together and do things, work in teams. Like you're going to be much smarter working in a team. That's how I started. But I think ultimately the goal is to be like a Beyonce or, a JT and just be able to break off on your own. And then that's when you can start betting real money. So I think like horse betting, like most people don't treat it like I treat it, right? I'm not just like throwing money around, and like I'm on a destiny to be the best in the world. And so like, that said, the best in the world doesn't mean one. There's going to be all kinds of best in the world. There's going to be all kinds of great players, right? Mm-hmm. So I just know that I have to learn my boundaries, and I think being disciplined is the first place to start with people. And the only way to become disciplined is to lose. To your point about losing like correctly. So I think Garrett Skiba is a hell of a player, like massive respect, and his style is absolutely valid in terms of not necessarily going all in most of those situations, especially if you don't have a strong opinion. Like you should only be betting if you have strong opinions. So that's why I think it's very hard for people to have those strong opinions that are willing to sacrifice their hard-earned money just, for the sake of glory. But it's all for the ego. So you have to like separate ego, separate emotion, and literally just find that zen, that sweet spot, get in the zone where like this is the right decision. And if you wait long enough, you're going to make money. And that patience comes, you gotta be burned so many times to build up that tolerance and those guts to be able to make big bets. But I think like, I can totally understand why most players don't go all in. But when the stakes are on the line and you're trying to, change your life with a score, why would you want to rest on your laurels with a small, like 10 to 15th place finish in the BCBC? Like take a big shot. And I think a lot of it comes down to like massive preparation. And when I mean massive preparation, I mean for the Breeders' Cup, I'll spend 10 days, probably like 10 full days looking at things and trying to understand where my feelers are with everything. And then I'll still make mistakes. Like, last year was the biggest fuck up of my life, like by far. And those are situations that come up, and no matter how well prepared you think you are, even the most trivial mistakes can happen. And, and that you just have to bounce it off, like brush it off and be like water, like Bruce Lee says, and you just got to adapt. And then you got to, reorganize yourself and make sure you learn for the next time. So I don't know if I'm kind of in alignment with you on certain players not betting big, but I understand if you want to lose slowly, you're going to lose slowly playing that way.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think there's people that are more comfortable with that, for sure, even though they maybe shouldn't be.
Yeah, I guess if you're would you rather get knocked out and laid out by Mike Tyson, or would you rather be like jabbed to death by like, I don't know,
Takeout?
There you go. So, it's again, horse racing or gambling in general is about understanding rejection, getting comfortable with it to the point where you don't like it anymore. So you're initially drawn into it because of the score, right? Oh, the dopamines, we're all about, we're basically just chemicals anyway, but it's like the idea of just getting high dopamine spikes. Okay. So we get these big scores. Great. But then you start realizing, okay, when you don't get the spikes anymore and this, all of a sudden that cherry high is like running off. It's like, now, okay, what is it about? Now you got to get a bigger score and a bigger score. And so I think you have to monitor why you're in the game of gambling or horse betting or sports betting. Cause like I've actually started looking a lot more at sports betting too, particularly NFL stuff. And there are certain contexts that can arise, again, just like in horse racing. There are certain teams that are pitted against each other and that there's an edge. You can tell but again, you have to track this over years to really feel comfortable, like in this context, that this is going to work. And it's hard when you've got 11 guys or 50 something guys on each team and lots of turnovers and things can happen. But I think you have to understand like how, where, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and then be real with yourself. Recognize that this is hard-earned money. This is not just about getting a couple of big scores, telling your friends, and this is about if you're in alignment with me, like, and you're trying to actually win money at this. It requires lots of work, lots of self-reflection. You have to eat so much crow. You have no idea how many times you're going to think you know what you're doing. And that's why there's no money in the obvious. Like, and people have this illusion. Oh, great. I picked a horse that's, below 3-1 that came second or won every once in a while. And you start looking at that math and you multiply that out over months and years. And you start to realize that these people are just losing. And they look good in a sense. Their horse ran second. He was close. If you lost by a nose, you're dead wrong. Yeah. Like, people don't realize a nose is actually a lot. And so like there's so many stories we like to tell ourselves to try to massage our ego. Oh, we're still doing right. We're still doing okay. But I think you just have to have these come to Jesus moments and say like, okay, where am I on the graph? Am I improving and declining? And then if you're not graduating, you need to find smarter players, and you need to team up with people, and you need to start asking more questions, and you need to start investing in computers, and you need to start like really thinking, where's the edge? And I think the biggest edge right now is in the tournaments. I think people can play in cash games and potentially make money there. Like, even if you're a small player. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your questions again. I just kind of keep blabbing.
Hey, we talked about it. We kind of just wanted this to be a little bit of a free-form chat instead of necessarily a quote-unquote interview. Earlier you talked about the crystals, and we had talked before just about general nutrition and how you're feeling and being in kind of the right space around the right people when you're at the track or a tournament, or just, I guess, in general. I suppose it applies outside of horse racing as well. But how much of a part of that is, or how much a part of your approach is just kind of that holistic health for your horse playing and just life in general?
I think it's really interesting to think about why we are who we are. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're born into this family. Do we choose our parents or not? So I'm going to start with like a God conversation. So like, there's something bigger going on, whether it's extraterrestrials. I've been watching Ancient Aliens and stuff, and you start to realize that we could be just in this big petri dish, like Elon Musk kind of thinks, or some kind of simulation. But then it's like, okay, well, things start happening, and you start recognizing patterns in your own life. And so at an early age, one of my best friends basically introduced me to being vegetarian. So when that happened, not only did I start like my acne cleared up and I started having a lot more energy, but like I started feeling like mentally clearer, started just naturally making better decisions. I think being just, obviously it's a lifelong journey to get to to be where we think we're supposed to be and our best self, higher self. I take that very personally. I've been really lucky to have great parents that have instilled, really good values in me to appreciate myself and love others and things like that. So, blessed my dad who's passed 15 years ago or so. It's really like, it's about knowing like when you're, what your highest high is internally. So just like in betting, right? You start to like recalibrate things. If I start dropping alcohol, right? What happens? What are the people that show up in my life? How am I using my time? If I start, let's say exercising more and I start running more, like I can honestly tell you that one of the reasons like I'm actually a good horse player, I think has a lot to do with being an athlete in the sense that I run about 1,000 miles every year at least. And understanding what that does to the body and understanding good days, bad days, things like that is really important. But not only for just that sake, but for the body, mind, spirit stuff. Like if my body, it feels good. And again, I'm not perfect, man. I mean, I could definitely, lose like 5 or 10 pounds. I could lift more. I could push myself even harder. But I'm looking for like a clarity around, like I'm doing the best in terms of the foods I eat. Like I think like your brain and your digestion are so closely linked. That's why when you're really on fire, you don't need to eat much. So dialing that in, I've spent more than 10 years of my life in the holistic world, like meeting with like some of the smartest people. And after my dad got cancer and stuff and died, I was just like, I got to learn more about why these things happen. And for whatever reason, my destiny has introduced me to a lot of really smart teachers and really, from one of my best friend's parents to like all kinds of other gifted souls that just like have shown me that there's alternative things out there. Like for instance, there's things like applied kinesiology, using the body's muscle memory to link that with acupressure. And I know that sounds like a lot, but you start looking at acupressure points in the body. If your points are out of alignment, how are you going to make good decisions? That doesn't mean you're always going to make great decisions. And again, gambling is a weird frequency in general. When you're betting on horses and sports and things, these are very typically low frequency objectives. Like for 99.9% of the population, they're thinking they're going to win and they're going to lose. And so if you can get clear in your mind and take a lot of nutrition, and I take a lot of supplements, I think you saw on the reality show on Horse Players on NBC Esquire, like that, you saw that one scene where I was with my friend. I probably had 15 supplement bottles. Okay. So like when it comes down to working hard in the Breeders' Cup and I spend 10 days breaking it down, like I'm going to do the same for my body. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to always run every day. And that doesn't mean I'm always going to make the right decision. Yeah, I'll have some like vegan fast food every once in a while, but it's like, how can I get myself to my upper percentile and then figure out where my sweet spot is? Because yeah, maybe it's too hard to get, a 6-pack or whatever. It's just, I don't need it. Right. But I think like that relationship is emblematic of betting, right? Like what am I going to put in my body? And it's like, what am I going to put my money on a horse for? Like there's a parallel. Like, am I just going to put my money on any horse, or am I going to make a good decision there? Am I going to make a good decision with my body? And am I also going to surround myself with people that are not toxic? Mm-hmm. And I think like that's the number one thing that's, I think, helped me, is removing toxic people from my life. And it's not worth it. They suck and drain all the energy out of you. And it's just, that's why like I tend to be more introverted sometimes with people when it comes to being at the racetrack and so forth. It's just people want to, I don't know. It's not necessarily their fault. Everyone's got different hard backgrounds. I've been super privileged. And so it's just like trying to understand, like, how can I be at my best? And I need to be around other people when they're at their best. Mm-hmm. And so like, if I'm in a tournament room and I'm betting with people, I want to make sure everybody's in a really good space and not complaining about things and worried about things and distracting and so forth. So I think starting with like having a good series of practices, some meditation, some gratitude exercises, running, swimming, just eating well, positive affirmations, like being really like understanding your weaknesses. And I know like I'm going deep in all this, but do you as a horse player like yourself, do you ever like see yourself perform better when you're taking better care of yourself? Or, not that it's easy to remember off the top of your head, but
I'm going to take it in a different direction with race calling. I have 100%. I mean, I've had a lifelong history of poor diet, and I've had a lot of issues with depression, anxiety, and all that kind of stuff. And it sidelined me from announcing for a number of years because it got too much. And I realized over the last couple of years that part of the reason the anxiety was getting so exacerbated was because my diet was so poor, and because, the reaction to feeling bad is to not go do things. It's to not go do things well. It's to not exercise, which kind of just, it's, the self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit. And with race calling, I've noticed that, if I go out and take a walk in the morning, and if I get some nature, and if I eat better, and I just kind of do all these little things, my performance is better because I feel better. I'm a little more acute. I'm less paying attention to maybe some symptoms of eating poorly that would have, happened, whether it's reflux or any of that kind of stuff. And I think it shows up in work. And like, I remember last year, when I was at Monmouth, I always like to brag, I'm the only guy that's ever called maximum security to a real loss in the Pegasus Stakes. And
I remember that. Yeah.
And I remember that day and that whole week leading up to it, because we didn't even know he was going in the race until really like the day before entry day. And I remember, they had drawn the races, and we had the UN was the next week. So I was already kind of nervous about the UN looking forward because I'd never called a grade 1 before. But when they announced maximum security was running in that race Saturday, like I immediately was like, okay, I got to like have 3 or 4 really clean days of living here, and I got to walk every day, and I got to do all these things because I can't not be, because I know I'm going to be nervous, and I'm much better equipped to be nervous when I'm feeling better. And I'll never forget when they went into the gate for that race. I remember clicking the mic off, and I put a little cold water on my neck just to kind of chill me out. But I just remember taking a deep breath. And Vic Stoffer told me one time, he goes, "Always remember that you wanted to do this. Like it's not, you're not being forced to do this. You're where you want to be calling a big race." And I remember when I just took that deep breath and thought about that, and then the gates pop open, and it's like, oh, I know how to do this. But it's so much easier to do that and perform at that higher level when I'm just feeling better. And that, for me, that's become a result of walking more and exercising more and just doing some little things to, they call it self-care in the books I've read, and just doing more of that kind of stuff. And it's amazing how much it can help performance, but also hinder it. I mean, if I was down at Gulfstream last year, and I went out with Pete Aiello, and we went out for ice cream and Mexican food and the whole 9 yards. And the next day I did not have a good day. Like I didn't want to be there. I was tired. I was feeling lousy. So I think that, to tie it in with horse players, I think it expands way beyond that for everybody, and it's it's something important to think about. I mean, what kind of care are you taking? If you got a horrible night's sleep, I mean, how at your best are you? At the race the next day? I would guess not very good.
Yeah, first of all, badass share, man. I like that vulnerable, share. Just in general, like I think as guys, it's harder to say when things aren't going as good, and to notice the differences, when we start to just make a small step. It's, again, it depends on your context as a person. Like if you're a horse player and you're a race caller, I mean, my God, I give you so much respect. It's such a hard job. Like I can imagine like how easy it would be just to just eat yourself up if you make if you just get in a weird mental state and in the middle of the race, you just break down. Like I don't know if I could do it. I would.
That has happened, but I've told friends that like there are thoughts that come through your head in the middle of a call, and that are so far away from calling the race. And luckily you're a little bit on autopilot and stuff, but it is, I mean, I'll literally have all my foot fell asleep one time during a race. I'm just like, what if I fall? That's all I could think about the rest of the race. And of course the call wasn't great because, I'm just not laser focused on it. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's even a good exercise right there in terms of being, super conscious and knowing that you're not going to let your foot ever fall asleep again. Yeah. Right. So that you're totally ready for, but again, that's kind of this journey. So I mean, like, props to you for recognizing, that there's value there. Right. So the question is like, if there's value, if you're looking for value in betting, right, if you're trying to find wise investments, to bet on, if you're going to take it to that level, then you have to treat your own life as valuable. And so value is a theme, right? So it's like all the decisions you make, whether it's things for your house, it's people you want to invite into your world for love or for, friendship or for business. Like there needs to be like a good value exchange where, you're getting something from each other in a way that's like of the same frequency. So I just think food is so underappreciated, and it just blows my mind. Like, it blows my mind how people just destroy their bodies. Like, you're given this amazing gift, right? It's like, just we all have our ups and downs, right? We all have our different traumas and emotional stuff. So it's like, how can we shift that? And, that's why enrolling other people in our lives, like I've been in men's groups and I've led a couple of men's groups before. And it's like, you get a different collection of men, all different ages. Everyone's got a different story, different shit in their life, and they all need support. And, we're just, we're going into like a weird direction with the COVID stuff and the mental health crisis and all the changes to come, because I literally, like, we're going to be in mask world for multiple years. We're going to have all kinds of new, conflicts that arise from the hyper political like environment we're in. Everybody's wanting just to get mad at each other all the time. So I think like it's extra important to really take these self-care initiatives seriously. So I think, like, by all means, like, if you had any questions afterwards, I'm always down to share. If anybody here wanted any information about their health issues, like, by all means, just send me a quick note. Just be like, hey, what would you do? And I can always point people in different directions, different websites and stuff. But like, there's so much. If it's like mind, body, spirit, again, they're all connected, right? You have to believe in something bigger than just yourself, yet you have to start with yourself to be able to believe in something bigger. So it's always just back and forth. You have to take care of your health, like with your physical side, and you have to like nourish yourself. And then also you have to let yourself go and not be like, a robot. I mean, obviously everyone needs to let loose and escape and stuff. So it's just always this dance, but you always just want to make sure you're on a trajectory upwards. And so if you're going to be gambling and risking dollars, like, that's like a very interesting like environment, right? It's almost like a war zone. Like, you're literally going to war in a sense, right? You're pushing your dollars, and you're literally push all that energy, right? Think about how many hours you work to get that money, all this investment in your soul to get you to this place where you're now risking this money. And why are you risking it? Are you risking it just because you want the dopamine rush of losing or whatever? Or, because again, there's a dopamine rush that can happen when people lose, because then they got close and they feel so close. Oh my God, I'm going to get there next time. I'm going to get there next time. And so you have to understand your brain chemistry with this. And these are like, this is some deep psychological stuff, right? And I mean, I don't even want to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. I just know that if I'm like taking good care of myself and I'm exercising, as much as I can, like, I think, like, to your point about calling a race, like, if I wasn't like, if I run, and then I do something, I tend to do it probably at least 10% better. Like if I do something heavy exercise the day before, because I'm so relaxed. So I think when it comes to betting, I think like people have to understand how to exercise themselves with their mind too, and not get lazy. Like making sure you watch, all the horses that you're interested in, making sure you look at all the data, you look at all the things. Like, everyone always asks me, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Well, I'm not looking at any new information that everyone's looking at. But what I'm doing is I'm able to understand the context, and I'm able to understand the probability. Like, I'm good at assessing probabilities in certain circumstances. And that doesn't mean I'm always going to be right. And sometimes you're forced to make decisions. But I think like you have to treat that like your body. And if you just wing it, it's kind of like if you just decide, oh, I might go exercise today, or I might not, or I might just go eat something. I might just kind of go to some random place. Like, it's going to catch up with you. So I think just constantly, like, it's all connected. If you want to be a better, you got to start taking care of yourself. You got to start having some practices for your mind. And then you got to get real with yourself, and you got to ask yourself, like, where am I stuck? And most of the time we're not smart enough to figure it out on our own. Like, I mean, it took me a long time for my friends to realize how, like, inconsiderate I can have been as when I was in college, like how I was very selfish. And so, like, it took me a long time to realize, hey, I really need to think about other people in the equation. And so, like, as I've personally developed, I've gotten to a place where, I can accept my own weaknesses and my blind spots by asking other people and going into like self, like development programs and getting feedback. So you're not afraid to shake your ego, because if you're going to be a good horse player, and if 99% of people are losing, guess what? You're going to have to change something. And most people don't like to change easily. Most people don't like to ask questions. Most people don't like to listen to anybody. Nobody wants to be told what to do. It's like the American way. So you're going to have to do something if you want to make that shift. And, at some point there might be a time where I'm more willing to like do some kind of discussions, group in like a Facebook group or something where it comes down to like, a very select few people. But it's tricky because I just feel so cautious knowing that people's hard-earned money are on the line. And it's like, I think I could help people actually reduce their losses by betting less. Mm-hmm. Like that's like the number one thing I would suggest to people is really ask yourself when you're making this bet, is it really worth it? And I think most people aren't really in tune with what kind of value, what they're not really in alignment with what value really is to them. Like they think they know what value is, and maybe it is just about the entertainment experience and getting close or winning a little here and there. But like, if you want to be profitable, you're going to have to really be around other players that are profitable, and you're going to have to hold yourself accountable by talking to other people about situations and stuff like that. So.
Well, Christian, we're pretty much near the end of our time. I do want to say for folks who are listening on my podcast, you can watch the interview here on Christian's YouTube channel, and you can reach him on Twitter at Raw or Die, and then he's got his email up on here is at rawordie1@gmail.com. Not at, but just rawordie1@gmail.com. But appreciate the conversation, man. It was fun.
Yeah, brother. Happy to. I'll try and find some other guys that might want to talk to you too. I really appreciate your spirit. It's a good one. And I wouldn't just do this with anybody. So that's a true testament to my limited like interactions and listening to one of your podcasts or two. And so I really appreciate your person. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to start doing some more interviews too, just because I thought it's kind of fun to do during COVID. Like I interviewed Victor Espinoza, on the channel, and I'm going to probably interview, looks like Pat Valenzuela, who's kind of an interesting character.
Legend.
So yeah, so I'm just going to continue to kind of put myself out there here and there, but I appreciate the invitation, and yeah, let's stay in touch and connected, and happy to help however I can, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Well, let's enjoy the rest of our year before the Breeders' Cup, and let's make some money and definitely just like keep people at peace. Like let's not kill each other. If you have a difference with somebody, just relax. And, I know these are hard times, but like, we don't need to hurt each other. And hopefully, things will start to work themselves out soon. But anyway, thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much, Christian.
Cheers, brother. Be well.
All right.